Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I think Corey's just turning everything over to me and giving us the opportunity to begin today's webinar. My name is Chuck Davidson. I, of course, am the President and CEO of the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce, and I thank you all for joining us today for today's webinar, our first MB Poly Power Hour web event of our new season. I want to thank you all for joining us. We're here on a virtual platform. We always like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today, and we acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. Yesterday, of course, was Canada's inaugural National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It was definitely a day of reflection, learning, and listening for many of us. And I sincerely hope you were able to take some time yesterday to explore the concept of reconciliation in action and what that looks like for your business, your family, and for your nation's future. Before I pass it over to today's special guest, the newly appointed Minister of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration for his formal presentation, I would like to say a very special thank you to our MB Poly Power Hour series sponsor, 6P Marketing, for their ongoing investment in our events. It is through their generous support like this that MCC is able to deliver high-quality events like these. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind participants who submitted questions in advance that if you didn't have an opportunity to submit a question or a question arises for you during Minister Ewasko's presentation, please feel free to type it in the Q&A panel at the bottom of the Zoom screen. I will work hard to get through as many as I can, but if we don't get to your question due to time constraints, we will forward them to the Minister's office to collect the answers. And of course, we are making the link available next week. Many of you will know that our members are facing extraordinary challenges created by the pandemic. Business leaders, particularly in the hardest hit sectors and industries, have been very open with us about the devastating impact on operations, including their increasingly difficult ability to find and keep staff, and to ensure that those employees have the skills they need to fulfill job requirements. We've got immigration, which typically bolsters Manitoba's population, significantly has been stalled, and international students, who are massive contributors to Manitoba's economy, have been unable to join us for the last 2 years. Universities and colleges have been dealing with the complexities of keeping students safe, which of course has resulted in virtual models changing the entire higher education experience. All of these critical issues are part of the mandate of the Minister of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration. So let's welcome today's special guest, the Honorable Wayne Ewasko, who was first elected as the MLA for Lac du Bonny in 2011, was re-elected in 2016 and 2019, and served as chair of the Government Caucus from 2016 until his recent appointment as Minister of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration. Prior to his election to the Manitoba Legislature, he worked for 17 years as a teacher and guidance counselor in the Sunrise School Division. Minister Wayne Ewasko, welcome to the MB Poly series. The floor is yours, and you can take it away.
Thank you very much, Chuck. And I'm going to, if it's okay with you, I'm going to share my screen and get a PowerPoint up here. There we go. Give me a thumbs up if you see the moving forward together. Right on. Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And as Mr. Chuck Davidson has said, I'm Wayne Ewasko. I'm the Minister of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration with the Government of Manitoba. And I am delighted to be a part of the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce monthly webinar series. I would like to, as well as Chuck had already said, I would like to acknowledge that we here in Manitoba reside on treaties 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 lands, which are the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and of course the homeland of the Métis Nation. I'd like to thank Chair of MCC, Paul Provost, the board, and of course President and CEO Chuck Davidson for the invitation to talk about our government and its efforts to attract, develop, and retain talent and skills in Manitoba. Over the past year and a half, businesses and organizations in Manitoba have faced extraordinary challenges, from trade impacts to supply chain disruptions, event cancellations, travel restrictions, and of course, labor challenges. The determination, ingenuity, and sacrifice of industries and individuals alike has been remarkable and significant. As we move through this moment in history, our government has been committed to supporting businesses, students, and their communities while protecting Manitobans as they live, work, learn, and play right here in Manitoba. Healthy communities require healthy economies, and our government's investments have supported businesses to create jobs and encourage employees to safely return to work. As well, investment in post-secondary and adult learning programming ensures Manitobans have the right skills, talent, and knowledge at the right time to rebound from the effects of the pandemic and support economic resilience and growth. As you may have noticed, there have been some structural changes to this area in government. Early this year, the Department of Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration was created, where our mission is to build knowledge and skills through a competitive advanced education system and open immigration programs. This is in turn drives economic growth and new opportunities for all Manitobans. Through this structure, we'll be able to focus on our vision of a skilled and talented Manitoba, creating economic and social prosperity. For instance, early this year, Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration launched the Skills, Talent, and Knowledge strategy, specifically on February 8th. Through this strategy, we're committed to fostering and enhancing strong partnerships between government, post-secondary institutions, and industry to improve student success and create economic prosperity. There is much common ground when reviewing the goals of the Skills, Talent, and Knowledge strategy and the policy resolutions of the Manitoba Chamber of Commerce. Both have goals to make the most of immigration pathways to help address labor market gaps that cannot be filled domestically. For instance, an action of the strategy is to build partnerships and explore the potential for a technology talent plan for Manitoba with a focused immigration stream. Both the policy resolutions and the strategy promote work-integrated learning and focus on providing as many opportunities for on-the-job learning to students as possible. And a strong theme consistent between both is a continued effort to improve alignment between post-secondary institutions and, of course, labor market needs. Throughout Manitoba, there is work underway to meet the priorities outlined in the Skills, Talent, and Knowledge strategy. Manitoba is taking action to ensure students are able to apply classroom learning to real work experience, including a path forward on work-integrated learning in partnerships with our post-secondary institutions. Adult learning and literacy supports the strategy's vision and continues to be a priority so that Manitobans will have the right skills, talent, and knowledge to succeed in their careers. Immigration, a key pillar of the strategy, continues to be an important tool to support Manitoba's economy, employers, and communities throughout the post-pandemic. Business immigration through Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program helps attract entrepreneurs with the strongest commitment to Manitoba and the highest potential to contribute to our economic growth. International students bring talent, motivation, and in-demand skills that provide long-term economic, social, and cultural benefits to our province. In 2020, 4,805, so 85% of skilled worker nominees had a job or a job offer at the time of nomination. Of these, just under 3,000, so 61%, were graduates of Manitoba post-secondary institutions. Manitoba had the lowest immigrant unemployment rate in Canada during the pandemic affected 2020, and participation, employment, and unemployment rates consistently outperformed the national average from 2006 to 2020. The number of international graduates nominated by the MPNP for permanent residency has increased nearly sixfold, from 501 nominations in 2014 to 2,946 nominations in 2020. Manitoba continues to invest over $1 billion every year in post-secondary education through direct and indirect funding. Within Manitoba, we have many strengths, as well as many opportunities. There has been tremendous effort put forth by all Manitobans. However, we know that there will continue to be challenges. Together, we can leverage our collective strengths as we move toward our common goal of a bright and strong future. In the upcoming months and years, businesses and organizations can further contribute to Manitoba's recovery and success by assisting in research and information gathering. An accurate understanding of what knowledge, skills, talent, and capacities Manitobans will need in the future will help post-secondary institutions, private vocational institutions, students, and industry all succeed. Participating in these consultations has helped develop the skills, talent, and knowledge strategy, and will continue to assist Manitoba in realizing the strategy's goals. In closing, I commend the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce for all their hard work organizing this series, and I want to again thank Paul and Chuck and the board and all of you for not only inviting me here to speak today, but also for attending today's speaker series. So thanks, Chuck. Back over to you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And we'll get into some of those questions as we kind of go through, but maybe just to kind of start, obviously, being in a minister's role, that you're new to this portfolio, your first opportunity as a minister starting in January, maybe talk a little just about, one, the opportunity that's been afforded to you and going into a brand new portfolio as well.
Well, I'm not sure how much time we have, Chuck, but I can't tell you how ecstatic I was beginning of January to be informed by then Premier Brian Pallister that he was appointing me to this portfolio. I think it's something where I have to applaud him for creating this portfolio, because if I was to sit back and try to develop something that was to a certain percentage in my wheelhouse, but also looking forward to how we were going to sort of help recover the economy post-pandemic, I think this is exactly the way it was going to be developed. With the advanced education, skills, and immigration side of it, I mean, we need workforce. We need the individuals to be skilled up and be able to move forward post-pandemic. And so when I was told that I was going to be the Minister for Advanced Education, Skills, and Immigration, I was absolutely ecstatic, because as I've said before, and you said in a little bit of the intro, I'm coming with the education, the teacher background. So the component working with my post-secondary institutions, I think, was sort of in my wheelhouse a little bit. The immigration component had been a steep learning curve right off the bat, but surrounded by some incredible people here in the department to help me with that, and I think we're moving forward quite nicely.
Minister, how has the transition been to, I mean, you're basically creating a new portfolio. So it's not like you're going into something that was already pre-existing where you had a lot of the files. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, I guess the challenges perhaps, being a new minister, creating a new portfolio as well, and how, does that give you a bit of the opportunity to put your own kind of stamp on it, or to develop that, and some of the challenges with that creates as well, coming that it had been, for the longest time, education had all been in one altogether, and then the immigration part had been with EDJ as well, and economic development and jobs, and then the ability to kind of bring these together. Maybe talk a little bit about that and sort of your vision for where you want to take the department.
Sure. Well, I think right off the bat, Chuck, the nice thing is we did have some consistency within the few of the departments, because these came, as you mentioned, components of the new department came from others. So some of it was existing. And I think being able to focus on some mandates as far as where we want to go forward, and again, focusing on that post-pandemic, like what is Manitoba going to need when we start to exit this. I mean, we're in our fourth wave as we speak. Some of the challenges, again, was a bit of a hurry up offense almost, really, because we had a few months to go before the end of the fiscal, because of course our fiscal year is April till the end of March. So there was some challenges in reorganizing the department. But with that, I'm surrounded by some great talented individuals within the department, and then reaching out to the post-secondary institutions. I'm fairly fortunate. I've had the pleasure of getting to know a good percentage of the presidents beforehand. So they were a welcoming group, and absolutely, I felt comfortable in that environment as well. And then reaching out to our immigration partners throughout the province has been a real huge asset for not only myself as a minister, but I think for the department to really, again, be listening to the grassroots, the people on the front lines, as far as what they need to for us on how to support them.
One of the key things that you kind of talked about, and I think has been key in your tenure so far, is really been the release of that Manitoba Skills, Talent, and Knowledge strategy. Let's talk a little bit about that. So, for some of our viewers that are on the line here today, talk about what you see, what that document is, and is that really going to be the driver for the department in terms of where you going forward?
Thanks, Chuck, and that question, I don't think we have to get the word out even more on the STK document, the Skills, Talent, and Knowledge Strategy document. This was a document that was in the works, and it had, came about, some of the Auditor General's report, the college's review, some other key stakeholders had been basically instrumental in coming forward and developing this. The biggest thing that I want to say to everybody is the Skills, Talent, and Knowledge Strategy is a living, breathing document. And so we're looking, so now we're, just starting our 9th month in after announcing it in February. It's a 3-year living, breathing document. It's going to be evolving because, of course, as the pandemic, as we're seeing pretty much on not quite a daily basis, but not far off, things are changing here in Manitoba. And so with the STK strategy, the exciting piece that I found as the new minister and getting, fully immersed in the document when I was first appointed, the exciting thing is we hear buzzwords all the time. We hear, whole of government approach, right? You'll hear that from all provinces all over the place. And as you said earlier, I mean, this pandemic is not just Manitoba. This is not just Canada. This is worldwide. And so with this document on how we're going to move forward post-pandemic, this can't be just a whole of government approach. This cannot just be, any particular community in Manitoba. This has to be a north, south, east, and west approach to making sure that Manitoba is ready to go post-pandemic. And with that comes workforce. I know that your organizations within the Manitoba Chambers have struggled. It's been a tough, year and a half, and it's going to continue to be relatively tough in regards to workforce. So we got to see what we need. The 4 pillars, not to go a little bit further on this, but the 4 main pillars in the document is basically anticipate, align, foster, and grow. So we mentioned earlier offline just quickly, I mean, anticipate. What does Manitoba need? For years, when I was still teaching in the K-12 system, we would always, as a guidance counselor, we would hear from our post-secondary partners. We would hear from our business partners or community partners, and they'd come to the guidance counselors and say, look, you've got to really, direct students to this because this is what we're missing, or this because this is what we're missing. And that's why I think right off the bat, when you asked me to speak a little bit about this portfolio and how excited I am about this, I mean, I rewind the clock all the way back to 2011, and this was one of the reasons that I chose to run as the MLA for Lac du Bonnet. I mean, I was teaching and guidance counseling and absolutely loving my job when I left it to move on and do this, and then to be given this portfolio. This is absolutely fantastic, and I'm excited because we've got a great province. We've got a whole lot of great talent here in Manitoba, and we've got some programs and our post-secondary institutions that absolutely knock it out of the park. So I think with anticipate what does Manitoba need, then align our training with some of that, and then foster entrepreneurship, and then grow and retrain, or retain and train and retain, basically our own. But we know as you're hearing from your members, I'm hearing it from your members, I'm hearing it all across the province. We're a bit short on some certain skilled laborers. So that's where the immigration piece comes in. So
let's talk a little bit about the, mentioning the strategy. I think the one thing I really like, and in anything that I've been involved with as well, when you develop a strategy, there's always this notion that, oh, great, we're developing another strategy. It's a booklet. It's going to sit and get dusty on a shelf and those kind of things. I like the fact that you talked about it being a living document. So, what kind of checkpoints do you see? And obviously in workforce issues, in terms of what you're looking for, how important is that going to be, and what kind of processes do you kind of see as minister to make sure you're putting in place that there's your sort of regular check-ins or inputs to make sure that this document does become that living document and you are able to kind of make those adjustments as needed kind of moving forward?
Thanks, Chuck. And I'm just going to do a shameless plug again for it, but I'm going to hold it up here.
Absolutely.
So we're going to make sure that, Chuck, if you haven't had the chance to send the link out to your members, we're going to make sure you get a copy of the link.
Yeah, if you send the link, we'll forward it to all of anyone that's listening today, and we'll put it on our website as well, along with this presentation.
Please, because I mean, that's it. I really do feel that our government is based on the collaboration approach and the listening, and obviously we can't have all the answers, right? Nor are we expected to know all the answers. The document is housed in advanced education skills and immigration, but as I said, it's not only a whole of government approach. I mean, you take a look at all the departments within government. I don't think there's any that this skills, talent, and knowledge strategy does not touch. And then you go outside of this wonderful government experience, and that's where I talk about Manitoba as a whole, north, south, east, and west. We have to be, because we're diverse. We're an incredible province. I mean, I look at my own constituency and the Lactobani constituency. We've got to be listening to everybody because we have absolutely everything just in my constituency. So I go from Victoria Beach east to the Manitoba Ontario border, go all the way south to just east of Steinbach, and then zigzag all the way back up to Beausejour, Garson, Tyndall. So we've got tourism, we've got we had the pulp and paper, we're hoping to rejuvenate some of that. We've got fishing, we've got mining, we've got the Whiteshell Provincial Park, we've got everything. So, I mean, we got to make sure that we're open and listening to everybody across the province and have them have an opportunity to chime in. And so that goes with taking a look at labor market needs, working with our partners in the business community, and then having our post-secondary institutions come to the table and have everybody sort of in the room at the same time, listening to one another and pivot, being able to pivot and being a little nimble on whatever programs to a certain degree.
Minister, that, and I think that relationship between business, post-secondaries, and government is one we've always identified as really the key to addressing labor market needs in terms of, businesses identifying where their challenge are, talking to the post-secondaries who have been terrific, and I know a number of them are on this call in terms of developing those programs, and then, typically government's role is sort of the funding. So, do you see that needs to really be strengthened, or are we at a good position now in terms of how that relationship is working?
I think there's always room for improvement, and I think if you sit back and think that the status quo is good, then you're mistaken. I think there's a lot of great things going on. I think there's I've for years and years and years I've always said, what's going great, leave it alone. What's going okay and needs a little bit of tweaking, and what needs to be discarded. Right? Let's have that conversation with all the experts, and I think a lot of those conversations are happening. I think they have been happening as well, and I think sometimes it's I think this is another big plug for why the department makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to me, and I've spoken to a lot of individuals across this great province of ours. I think they're excited that the post-secondaries have their own department, and so then they can focus on that post-secondary, after the K to 12 experience on what are we doing, what are we offering those students or youth or adults that maybe, they're thinking, hey, I've been doing this particular occupation for quite some time. I'm going to start looking at what else our post-secondaries have to offer for myself to upgrade either skills or move into a different occupation.
Minister, sort of based, just building off your comments, and talking and being in the role for the last 9 months. So what are the things when you come into this role that you think we are doing well, and what are the things that we need to improve upon?
That's a great question. I think in some cases, what I think we're doing well is, again, I think we're having those conversations. Sometimes we're not tooting our own horns enough.
Horrible at that. We never do that.
I think, to a certain degree, I think we've got a lot of incredible things to offer here in Manitoba, and that's with, entrepreneurial opportunities. Our programming and our post-secondary institutions are really second to none. I just don't think that somehow we're not advertising or shouting out to the rest of the country and the world on what we have to offer here. I've been here absolutely all my life here in Manitoba, and I think once you make it through one summer of some real bad mosquitoes or one minus 45 winter, I think you get hooked, and it is an incredible place to, as I said in my intro, to live, work, learn, and play. And we need to encourage more and more people to get here to Manitoba and enjoy. And again, we need to train and retain our own. And so we've got to make sure that those opportunities are here for our youth and our kids and grandkids and moving forward. So I think the biggest thing is, and I've been on a Zoom call this year, of course, due to COVID, with the other ministers of education across the country, and I work closely with Minister Cullen through the K to 12 system. I said to the other ministers, I said, here's the STK strategy. We're coming for your best and brightest, and we're going to encourage their students to come to Manitoba and take their training here, and then hopefully have opportunities for them for their jobs, and then have them grow roots and stay here in Manitoba.
Let's talk a little bit. I'm getting some questions coming in through the chat and the Q&A section as well. So, immigration. This is one of the areas that we continue to hear just in regards to some of the workforce challenges that we've been dealing with. Are a large result of immigration being not the numbers that we've kind of seen in the past. So let's talk a little bit about that and some of the challenges that you're kind of seeing with immigration right now, specific to the pandemic and the impact that it's had on immigration in Manitoba.
So as I said right off the bat, when I first was appointed minister of this portfolio, I found that the immigration side was sort of my steep learning area. And the nice thing is I have met with many great organizations within the province and within the department, and to sort of to inform me. And I've, of course, had a lot of questions. And Chuck, you and I've had many conversations in the past where I like to, my favorite question is why and how come, right? So I think with the immigration side of it, as Manitoba is actually a leader in the country with the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program. One of my predecessors, Ian Wishart, I think he worked really, really hard on the file to bring our wait lists and wait times down from, at times, closer to a year. I think we're now going through applications probably as much as 45 days. And I think in most cases, we've got them under 30 days, which is a huge, huge, huge improvement. With the immigration file, I think, it comes down to relationship building as well. And so I've had many conversations in my short amount of time here as minister with the federal minister, Minister Mendicino. And we know the largest challenge right now for Manitoba and for Canada and then for the rest of the world has been this pandemic. So the borders have been closed. So we're working with, people interested in coming into Manitoba, but also the people that are already here and have those job offers and they're working. I did notice that there was a bit of a question in our Q&As on some of the north, right? So we have to be working closely and paying attention to our northern side of the province. I think we're trying to do that. I think we're working with those communities, trying to get skilled workers in those areas. But again, that comes to promoting and getting people interested in the different areas of this great province of ours, Manitoba.
One of the questions that did come through as well is just in regards to the provincial nominee program. And the question is that if we have an international, or if we have a provincial nominee program for international students and businesses, can we not have one for workers? Can we do something? Is that an opportunity that maybe the province is looking at, or the federal, would that have to be something coming through the federal government as well? So
as I said, I think working with the feds, and this isn't a passing the buck thing. I mean, this is, we've had conversations with the feds. They've taken on certain programs that that basically they've said that it's their wheelhouse on certain things. So we're trying to make sure that we're working with them and trying to encourage them to speed up some of their processes. And it's not to rubber stamp anybody by any means. I mean, you have to go through the proper process. You have to check. You have to make sure that everybody who's coming here is well intentioned, of course, and all that's going on. And I think we look to the feds to sort of speed up some of their approvals. And it seems that some of the pandemic side of it has put a bit of a slowdown on the federal approval side, but I get many emails, letters in regards to the overseas skilled worker stream and various different family streams, and that I think that's all going to be opening back up, and it is slowly opening up. We see that the feds are giving us a little bit more of I guess of our numbers that we can accept here in Manitoba and process. And so that is showing great signs. As I said earlier, I mean, the numbers that we've seen, the applications that we've seen over the last even 5-6 years has been an incredible change. I think, it's well over, 4, 5, 6 times the amount of applications and people that have been accepted through. So
one of the other questions that's come up, Minister, is just in regards to, and this is something that I've been hearing for the last number of months, is just the challenges with workforce are not specific to one industry or another. They seem to be across the board. And there's a number of, we hear all sorts of different rationales as to why that is, people not wanting to come off SIR, but, people in certain industries have moved on to other things. A lack of, from an immigration standpoint, we're not seeing that intake of new immigrants that we typically would have seen that are building that up, and just the training. Is there something specific, that your department is kind of focused on to address this, or is this just a sort of an overall plan? And again, I look at it, it's not Manitoba specific again, that we can really help these businesses, because that's the big thing I'm hearing, is that from a lot of businesses' perspective, whether it's in hospitality or in a variety of other industries, they don't have the ability to ramp up to operate at 100% capacity because simply they can't find the people to do that. So what do you tell business owners out there in terms of, some of the workforce challenges that you guys are seeing and that we're seeing as well?
Well, I'll tell you, as I mentioned, the vast constituency that I represent, I mean, we've got everything out there, right? And I'm finding, some of the businesses as you mentioned, the hospitality industry. So all of a sudden we have a workforce that mainly is post-secondary students looking for summer jobs. Well, so from May till the end of August, they've got some workers, but then what happens? They still have 2.5 months, and in some cases they're going through the winter as well, right? So how do we attract those individuals to stay and continue working in our province and in the various different industries? I think that's where we have to get back to some basics as well. And what I mean by that is we can't necessarily start getting people excited after they've graduated high school. I think some of that is that work that we're doing with the K-12 system, and then also with the post-secondary system, and again working with the chamber and the businesses, and taking a look at, again, what do we need here in Manitoba for skilled workers. And again, at times, I mean, people think right away, and I'll just say it, in the media, maybe not directed right at Wayne Ewasko, but at the government for talking about getting rid of humanities at universities. Well, that's absolutely couldn't be farther from the truth, because I've got many friends, of course. I've got a couple degrees and went to University of Manitoba, and I had to take humanities courses to be where I am today and for my degree. So I think we need to put aside some partisan rhetoric and actually focus on, here in Manitoba, what do we need? What do we have? Do the inventory, and let's promote ourselves and get more and more people that are in the province already, try to again train and retain them, but also attract them from other places as well. And whether that's immigration or throughout Canada, our own Canadian citizens coming to Manitoba, because we have an absolute fantastic province. And I think once we get them here and we keep them here for over a year, I think they'll grow roots. And it is a challenge right now. The pandemic has definitely put a challenge. I'm not 100% sure if the CERB program was very well thought out. We know that let's just say if you're a post-secondary student and or had a bit of a job and you were going to be impacted by COVID, and if you were gonna pull in $2,000 a month sitting at home, let's face it, what does industry have to pay? And that's where I think our government, in working with you and back then working with economic development and training under Minister Eichler before I got this portfolio, I think some of the programs that through Minister Fielding as well, I think we've launched some incredible programs to help fill some of those gaps. But it's challenging if you don't have the individuals lining up and putting in their resumes.
Minister, one of the questions that's come across, and this is something obviously that's pandemic related, and the challenges that of the impact that's been on our healthcare system, and what we're seeing is the frustration that some people, and I hope people notice as well, like he's got a Manitoba Chamber of Commerce mug that he's drinking out of, which is awesome, that I'm sure we got for him. So a big thank you for plugging us. Even if it's the old logo, we got to get you the new logo stuff.
It's a few years old, Chuck. I'm not going to lie.
I'm just wondering, when we talk a little bit about healthcare, if from your departments, is there plans to specifically, put increased measures to recruit and train and educate more healthcare professionals, specifically in regards to nurses, doctors, and surgeons? I know these aren't the kind of things that you can just kind of turn the switch and all of a sudden we've got, more nurses in 2 months' time. But obviously this is going to be something moving forward that we're going to have to address. And so how do we address that as a government, in your government, in terms of putting in place the supports and the training dollars to make sure that we're going to have the supports we need, specifically in the healthcare sector?
That's a great question, Chuck, and that's been a question. The easy answer is, well, that's the health department. Get Minister Gordon here to answer that question in the next series. But no, seriously, we know the healthcare system is stressed right now. We know that the shortage within our systems is a tough go, and so I think these questions have been had for years and years and years. I mean, I've been Monday is going to be my 10th anniversary as the MLA for Lac du Bonny, and the point is that for 20 plus years, all I've kept hearing is we're short nurses. So shortly, sometime I guess April, May, the discussion started happening. It was like, okay, well, why are we just not increasing seats? So we announced, we threw it out there. We said we're going to have this glob of money. We want to increase nursing seats by 400 nursing seats in the province. So we went to the post-secondary institutions and said, here's a glob of money. We want to increase the seats by about 400 seats. How are we going to do this? Can we do this? And why haven't we done this? And I say we, but I'm also looking at us, but also the previous government that was in power for 17 years. What are we doing to increase these seats and try to alleviate some of that pressure on our healthcare system? That's one initiative that we've done. And of course, as you know, you plant a tree today. If you plant an apple tree today, you're not getting the fruit off of it tomorrow. It's going to take some time. That sounds like a political answer, but in fact, if you increase the amount of nursing seats, you're looking at anywhere between 2 to 5 to 6 years before you're going to have some graduates. I had the pleasure of doing the nurse pinning ceremony back in the early summer. There's another one coming up. I mean, we are graduating nurses, which is great, but we need to get more and more people engaged in the nursing profession, and that being, LPNs, RNs, PNs. So that being said, we tag it into the immigration side. We know that there's many internationally educated nurses that are working within the province right now that are not working in that field. And so I had the pleasure of working with, at that time, Minister Stephenson and Minister Eichler, and then shortly after that was Minister Reyes, on developing a portal. And basically it's, again, what's our inventory? Who's out there? Who's trained in anything in regards to healthcare? So let's find out. Well, so the question was, how many internationally educated nurses do we think we have in this province? Well, so the guess was somewhere between 300 to 600. Well, that's quite a window, right? Especially if there's a percentage of them that we can get them trained, skilled up and trained and get them into the system. So the question was, why don't we just set up a portal where those that are trained from outside of our country, get them logging in and let's see what they've got, and then do a bit of a, I don't want to say vetting, but I mean, you have to. I mean, these are people that are going to be working in our healthcare system. You want to see what skills they have. And I think working with the various colleges was key, because how many do we have? And I think after the first 2.5, 3 weeks, Chuck, I think we had over 1,500 people sign on to that portal. Nice. Well, you think if you can get 10% of those individuals skilled up, or take a look at what their skills are, and whether it's an English requirement or some other, fine tuning some of their skills, it's a lot quicker than again, planting the apple tree and not getting any fruit for 5, 6 years. Yeah. Because the nurses, the healthcare system is strapped, and you hear that on a per hour basis here in Manitoba. The challenge is, you look across the country, you look around the world, everybody's experiencing the same thing. So it's tough. It's tough out there. But if we just sit back and just say, hey, it's tough out there and not do anything about it, that's not getting us anywhere. So I think the 400 nursing seats is huge, working with our post-secondary institutions. And again, a big shout out to those colleges for basically having those conversations with health and with my department, because we're the trainers, right? We're advanced ed is the trainers, working with everybody and seeing how can we get this done.
Minister, what steps are we taking as the government taking? I mean, one of the big challenges I've always viewed was really labor market information in terms of making sure that understanding, you know, and when you talked about the report as well, it's really anticipating where some of those gaps are going to be. Are we getting better data in regards to identifying here's where the challenges are and here's how we can anticipate that? I mean, I always tell the story, and this was from years ago when I first started looking at labor market information and how the government used to do it was by looking at want ads in newspapers. And so I remember talking to government, and this was previous government. It's not this current government. I'd be curious if you guys are still using the same model, but using that model, it would tell me, and I would ask, well, what are the jobs that are most in demand in Manitoba? And so by going through that, what I found was the jobs most in demand in Manitoba were truck drivers and hairdressers. And I said, really? I said, I think we probably need a better tool to be able to gather data in terms of where those labor gaps are. So maybe talk a little bit about the importance of labor market information and what the province is in maybe your department is kind of doing on that file.
Sure. I mean, basically it comes back down to those partnerships, right? And not necessarily recreating the wheel, but setting up various different types of databases. We know that there's other provinces that are doing a better job than we are at that. But that being said, it comes down to again, partnering with the Manitoba Chambers of Commerce, the Winnipeg Chamber, Economic Development Winnipeg, you know, and then also reaching out again, north, south, east, and west of the province and having those community conversations about what exactly is basically needed. And as I said earlier, the STK strategy is part of exactly what you're talking about. The very first pillar is anticipate, right? So how are we going to make sure that we've got what we need to be able to anticipate? And again, it doesn't have to be a crystal ball, because I think that information is there. We just need to make sure that we're tapping into those various different organizations. And that goes back to the consulting and having those collaborative discussions with all of our partners in Manitoba. Again, advanced education, skills, and immigration is not the only department that's going to be working on this. This is a whole of government, whole of Manitoba approach. And I look forward to, again, continuing working with absolutely everybody and making sure that, you know, whether it's EDJ or our Northern Minister Lajimodier, finance, you're talking education. I mean, it really is a whole of government approach. And then again, working with our partners outside of government as well.
Minister, we've only got a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to ask a couple more questions. One of the things that comes up, and we always kind of talk about this as well, is just in regards to credential recognition from other jurisdictions and sort of what we're looking at. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. We hear about that obviously from other countries, that it's a challenge that you may be, you know, have certain, you know, recognition in some countries that's not recognized here, but even as province to province, it can be different as well in terms of whether you're a red seal in Alberta might be different than it is in Manitoba. What kind of steps, and I always kind of, I mean, they always talk about this being, you know, provincial different jurisdictions and those kind of things. Are we taking some steps to recognize this, you know, so that labor mobility in Canada can be a lot easier?
I think, Chuck, you know, going back to what I did before I got into this wonderful gig called the MLA for Lactavani, you know, guidance counseling, right? I mean, we had many exchange students come from, internationally. And so there'd be times when I would get their transcripts and at times I'd have to get a translator in to help me, you know, talk about what the different things that those students were bringing to high school. and then checking and making sure that their credentials were being acknowledged and accepted in order to graduate high school. I think it really is something just like that. And again, it comes down to partnering and having those conversations with the experts in those various fields as well. So we talk about, the College of Nurses, physicians and surgeons. We talk about engineers. We talk about, pretty much everybody. So if somebody's coming in, they're bringing in some form of credentials. I mean, we do that in the immigration stream, right? So what are they bringing in? What skills are they bringing in? And again, this comes down to growing our workforce, seeing what we need, and again, that portal for the internationally educated nurses, I think was a great idea. It was a great launch. I don't know why it hadn't happened before. And again, to get a bit of an inventory, who's who in the zoo, who's who in Manitoba, who's got what skills, what do they need to fill certain gaps, or maybe they just don't know the opportunities that are out there. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I think, again, tooting our own horn, doing a little bit better job of marketing what we have, what do we need. And as you said, not everybody's picking up the whatever paper on a certain time and missing out on that want ad or job posting type of thing. So we just have to somehow, and that comes back to those 4 pillars: living, breathing document, having those conversations, solidifying some things, moving into the future, and making sure that we're all paddling in the same direction with the same wants and needs that we all need.
Maybe one sort of final question. This comes from Margot Cathcart, a new CEO at the Rural Manitoba Economic Development Corporation. And she's asking the question, and this might be to Minister Fielding, maybe we need to pass this to him as well, but whether or not consideration has been given to reinstating the returning graduate tax incentive. I know that was an initiative to bring those, former Manitobans that have maybe got educated somewhere else, a tax incentive to kind of bring them back to deal with our workforce issues. So not a bad idea. So, maybe your thoughts, and if that would be something we should pass along to Minister Fielding as well as the finance minister.
I don't think it's a bad idea to have that conversation with Minister Fielding either. But what we heard loud and clear on some of this, and Margot's right. I mean, to a certain degree, we've got some students studying in other areas of Canada and the rest of the world, and potentially some form of tax credit. But we heard loud and clear from the students that they were talking about access and accessibility of training. So keep in mind of what our Manitoba Scholarships and Bursaries Initiative is doing with tag teaming with Manitoba Student Aid and of course Canada Student Loans. We're making sure that those dollars are right up front so you can at least get in the door. We know here in Manitoba for years and years and years, some of our biggest challenges was that some very talented students, youth, adults who are looking to go to post-secondary couldn't get in the door because they can't afford it. So that's great to have a tax credit at the end, but you got to get in the door to make sure things are rocking. So, I mean, we've got, we've committed over $30 million in scholarships and bursaries through our post-secondary partners, which I think has absolutely moved the needle quite extensively. And then with the Manitoba Student Loans, I mean, Manitoba Student Loans right there is a 0 interest loan towards post-secondary education. And then the Canada Student Loans, there's a small amount of interest there. But I think the opportunities are there. And again, is to make sure that the students, whoever's looking to get into some form of post-secondary has those opportunities. So to make sure that the door is open for them. And if they are having those financial struggles, that those avenues are there. And I mean, the Business Council of Manitoba as well is a great partner, as well as, like I said, our post-secondary institution partners. So I appreciate Margot's question, and it's definitely something that we can chat about with Minister Fielding and have, potentially another tool in the toolbox. Why not?
Minister, I want to thank you very much for taking this time to talk with us today. I know this is an issue that's extremely important to the business community and to our post-secondaries as we really work towards, coming out of this pandemic and having that workforce that's needed to help grow the Manitoba economy, which we know is critical as well. Again, I just want to take this time to really thank you. Together with our Chamber Network, government, and the business community, our organization, of course, has worked tirelessly through the pandemic to provide guidance and support to members from all across the province, and we're proud of this collaboration we've fostered and are committed to seeing Manitoba businesses through the recovery. Just a reminder before I leave you, on October 14th, we'll be hosting Experts from Manitoba Possible live via webinar to talk about the value and opportunities of diversifying your workforce by hiring individuals living with a disability. You can go to jointhechamber.ca to register for this free event. Again, a huge thank you, Minister Ewasko, and to 6P Marketing, our sponsor, for joining us today. And I want to thank everyone for being on the line as well. Take care. We'll have this information. We'll push it out to the membership as well. And I hope everyone has a great day today. Thanks, everyone, for taking part.
Thanks, Chuck, and go Bombers, go tonight against BC.
Excellent.